The massive Marzolian warship darkens the skies over Geneva as Dr. Elena Vasquez, former Olympic pentathlete turned diplomat, stares up at its imposing silhouette. Alongside her, a carefully selected delegation of athletes turned diplomats prepare to meet the alien conquerors who have blockaded Earth's orbital defenses without firing a shot. Aboard the warship, Admiral Vrax, a towering insectoid with armored exoskeleton and 4 powerful arms, welcomes the humans with undisguised contempt. Holographic displays showcase the Marzolian Empire's conquests, 17 star systems, 8 subjugated species, and a military undefeated in 12,000 years of expansion. Your species lacks carapace protection, significant muscle density, or natural weaponry, Vrax announces, mandibles clicking in what humans recognize as laughter. We classify Earth as a soft annexation target. The treaty terms are brutal. Earth's resources harvested, human population relocated as laborers, resistance met with orbital bombardment. As a courtesy, Vrax invites the delegation to observe the Empire's famed combat arenas, where champions from conquered worlds battle for the amusement of their Marzolian overlords. The aliens fail to notice Elena's eyes narrowing as she studies their movements, cataloging physiological quirks. Their stiff turning radius, the way they overheat after sustained exertion, their reliance on rigid fighting patterns. We request 72 hours to present our response, Elena says, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Vrax grants this final dignity, certain of the outcome. As the humans depart, Elena exchanges meaningful glances with her team. The Marzolians have fatally underestimated what they're dealing with, a species that turns survival skills into games, and games into weapons. Inside the shuttle returning to Earth, Elena activates a quantum-shielded communication system. The delegation erupts into frantic discussion. "Did you see their exoskeletal joints?" asks Dr. James Chen, biomechanist and former gymnast. Triple-hinged but with minimal rotational capability. His fingers dance across a holographic interface, modeling the alien physiology. Colonel Maya Okafor, who competed in 3 Olympic wrestling tournaments before joining military intelligence, nods grimly. Their center of gravity is all wrong for rapid directional changes. And their respiratory system, those secondary breathing membranes, they are designed for oxygen efficiency, not thermal regulation. Elena studies the covered biological scans they managed to capture. They evolved on a high-gravity world with minimal seasonal variation. Their biology prioritizes structural integrity over adaptability. "That's our advantage," interjects Dr. Amir Khan, neurophysiologist and chess grandmaster. "They've dominated through brute force, selective breeding, and technological superiority, not adaptability. Their conquest methodology is as rigid as their exoskeletons." The shuttle breaches Earth's atmosphere, the blue curve of humanity's cradle replacing the cold void of space. Elena stares at the data streams, comparing Marzolian physiology with human capabilities. "They view our biological diversity as weakness," she says. "They don't understand that our recreational activities represent 12,000 generations of evolutionary problem-solving. They expect either immediate surrender or futile military resistance," Colonel Okafor adds. "Those are the only responses they've encountered in 17 conquered systems." Elena's expression transforms as inspiration strikes. "Then we'll give them something they've never seen before, something uniquely human." Dr. Khan raises an eyebrow. "Which is?" "A game." Elena's smile carries the weight of desperate innovation. "We'll challenge them to a competition they can't possibly understand, because they've never had to adapt to survive. They've only had to dominate." As the Geneva spaceport appears below, the delegation falls silent, contemplating the audacity of what they're considering. The fate of humanity might rest not on weapons or surrender, but on the games that have defined human culture since prehistory. "Get me a direct line to the Security Council," Elena commands, "and contact every Olympic committee worldwide. We need to assemble the greatest team in human history." The stakes couldn't be higher. 8 games to determine the fate of an entire world. The emergency summit at the United Nations erupts into chaos. Military leaders demand immediate resistance despite impossible odds. Others argue for surrender to avoid annihilation. Elena steps to the podium, silencing the room. The Marzolians have a cultural obsession with competitive dominance, she explains, displaying biological scans stolen during their visit. And they have critical weaknesses we can exploit. Her proposal is outrageous. Challenge the Marzolians to a series of competitive games to determine Earth's fate. Former NASA engineer and game theorist Dr. Marcus Kim outlines the strategy. Sports carefully selected to exploit alien physiological vulnerabilities while showcasing human evolutionary advantages. This is insanity, the Chinese ambassador protests. You want to stake humanity's future on sports. They expect us to either surrender or attempt futile military resistance, Elena counters. This third option will confuse them, and confusion is our only advantage. When the human delegation returns to the Marzolian flagship, Admiral Vrax's compound eyes widen at their counter-proposal. 8 competitive events, Earth-designed but modified for interspecies competition. If humans win, Earth remains independent with trade rights. If the Marzolians win, Earth surrenders without resistance. Vrax consults briefly with the Imperial xenobiologist, who displays comparative strength metrics showing humans drastically outmatched. With the agreement transmitted live across the Empire, Vrax cannot refuse what appears to be an easy victory. We accept your primitive challenge, Vrax announces, mandibles forming what passes for a smile. Though I fail to see how games played by a species that never left its own star system could possibly threaten the greatest warriors in the galaxy. As the human delegation departs, Elena's team begins encrypted communications with Earth's greatest athletes. The plan is more dangerous than anyone in the UN realizes. They aren't just trying to save Earth. They're laying the groundwork to bring down an empire. Behind the scenes, a global mobilization begins unlike anything in human history. The International Olympic Committee's headquarters in Lausanne transforms into humanity's strategic command center. Sports physiologists, biomechanics experts, and game theorists work alongside military strategists to design competition parameters that appear fair while subtly favoring human evolutionary advantages. Dr. Kim's team constructs a detailed matrix mapping human athletic capabilities against Marzolian physiology. We're not looking for events where we're strongest, he explains to assembled coaches. We need events where our strengths target their specific weaknesses. In Kenya's high-altitude training centers, Thomas Kiplagat pushes beyond ultramarathon limits, running 16 hours daily while medical teams monitor his cellular adaptations. In Beijing's sports science facilities, Lu Wei trains in experimental pools where water viscosity can be adjusted to simulate alien resistance patterns. The Marzolians evolved as ambush predators, Dr. Chen tells the athletes during briefings. Their exoskeletons store tremendous energy for explosive movements, but their metabolic recovery is surprisingly inefficient. If we can force extended exertion, their systems falter dramatically. Not everyone is convinced. Defense ministers from 3 continental powers threaten to launch preemptive strikes against the Marzolian fleet. We will not stake Earth's survival on games, Russia's defense minister declares. Elena confronts the dissidents in a closed-door session. Our military options achieve nothing except ensuring our annihilation. But through these competitions, broadcast empire-wide, we show every subjugated species that the Marzolians aren't invincible. This isn't just about saving Earth, Colonel O'Keffer adds. It's about planting seeds of resistance throughout their empire. Meanwhile, Admiral Vrax faces unexpected criticism from the Imperial High Command. This agreement is unprecedented, warns Supreme Commander Zextal. No conquered species has ever been offered such terms. These humans possess no technology or biology of concern. Vrax dismisses. Their challenge provides excellent entertainment before their assimilation. Imagine the propaganda value when we publicly humiliate them at their own primitive contests. The Supreme Commander remains troubled. 17 conquered systems, Admiral. All followed predictable resistance patterns. These humans are the first to suggest something entirely unexpected. Precisely why they're doomed. Vrax replies confidently. They've chosen to challenge us where we cannot be defeated. Direct competition. Their desperation has led them to madness. As both civilizations prepare, Elena makes a final transmission to Earth's team. Remember, we're not just competing. We're performing for an audience of 17 star systems watching their overlords for the first time. Make them believe in the impossible. The Marzolian orbital arena draws spectators from across the Empire. Viewing pods filled with various subjugated species hover around the massive circular track where the first event will take place, ultra-distance running. Thomas Kiplagat, the Kenyan ultramarathoner whose record-breaking desert runs made him legendary, looks almost childlike next to the Marzolian champion Dravkor. The alien stands nearly 3 meters tall, 4 powerful legs ending in clawed feet, secondary breathing membranes fluttering along its ribcage. Your human will surrender within the first cycle, a Marzolian official taunts Elena. Our champion can maintain 60 kilometers per hour indefinitely. We'll see, Elena replies, hiding her concern as Thomas stretches calmly. The race begins with Dravkor immediately surging ahead, disappearing around the curved track as Thomas settles into what seems like a leisurely pace. Alien spectators buzz with amusement at the apparent mismatch. After 2 hours, confusion ripples through the viewing pods. Thomas maintains his steady rhythm while Dravkor's pace has noticeably slowed. The Marzolian's breathing membranes flare desperately, its body temperature rising beyond optimal range. 4 hours in, Thomas passes his struggling opponent. Dr. Kim's voice comes through Elena's earpiece. Persistence hunting. It's how our ancestors caught prey that could outrun us in bursts. We couldn't outrun the gazelle. We ran it to exhaustion. By hour 12, medics rush to prevent Dravkor's collapse as Thomas completes his final lap, barely showing fatigue. The arena falls silent except for the subjugated species, who whisper among themselves with newfound interest. Admiral Vrax stands rigid, mandibles tight with rage. As the scoreboard updates, humanity, 1. Empire, 0. In the medical bay, the Imperial xenobiologist frantically reviews human biological data. These creatures evolved on a death world, she reports. Their thermal regulation, cardiovascular recovery, and joint durability exceed anything in our databases. They're persistence predators. Admiral, they don't win by being fastest. They win by never stopping. The viewing pods detach from the main arena, carrying alien spectators to private chambers throughout the station. Among the Centaurian delegates, a species conquered 8 centuries ago, Sub-Administrator Locke reviews forbidden historical records on a hidden device. The humans used the same hunting strategy our ancestors documented, he whispers to his companions, before the genetic modifications that made us suitable for mining work. In the Praxian viewing section, Commander Vril slides a claw across her battle-scarred exoskeleton. A species that hunts by exhaustion would develop different battlefield tactics than ours, she murmurs. Not the overwhelming force we've always failed against. Meanwhile, the human delegation gathers in their assigned quarters, monitoring the extranet broadcasts spanning the Empire. Subtle changes in transmission patterns indicate unprecedented viewing numbers. Every subjugated world is watching, Colonel Okafor reports. They expected entertainment. They're getting revolution. Thomas enters to thunderous applause from his teammates, moving stiffly but with a victorious smile. Medics immediately attach recovery devices to his major muscle groups. How bad is it? Elena asks the team physician. Micro tears throughout his musculature, elevated cortisol, dangerous electrolyte depletion. The doctor replies. But the nano-recovery protocols are already working. He'll recover. The race parameters exceeded our modeling by 27%. Dr. Kim adds, examining data streams. The Marzolians attempted to extend the endurance requirements beyond human capabilities. That was their first mistake, Thomas says, wincing as the medical devices pulse. They thought victory meant being superior in every measure. They don't understand that humans evolved to specialize in suffering. Alina's communicator chirps with an incoming transmission from Admiral Vrax. His compound eyes gleam with unconcealed fury. An unexpected outcome, the Marzolian commander acknowledges. We request a 48-hour delay before the next event. Denied, Alina responds coolly. The agreement specifies 24 hours between events. The swimming competition begins tomorrow, as scheduled. Vrax's mandibles clack in agitation. You would deny us time to analyze the results. The same way you denied us time to evacuate our vulnerable populations before your arrival. Alina counters. 24 hours, Admiral. After all, it's just games, right? As the transmission ends, Dr. Kim approaches with updated intelligence. They're rushing biometric data on all our athletes to their homeworld for analysis. They're trying to understand what else they've missed about human physiology. Perfect. Alina smiles. They're still thinking like scientists, not survivors. Let's see how they handle the water tomorrow, an environment where even their vaunted exoskeletons become a liability. The aquatic arena fills with a liquid matching Earth's oceans. Lu Wei, China's record-breaking swimmer, adjusts her cap as the Marzolian champion Grelnax enters from an underwater chamber. The alien's body features sleek, hydrodynamic contours, webbed appendages, and gill slits pulsing along its neck. Your species evolved from land mammals, sneers the Marzolian commentator. Grelnax's lineage has never left the oceans of our homeworld. What the aliens don't understand is the difference between natural ability and perfected technique. When the signal sounds, Lu's Olympic refined stroke demonstrates human innovation, the culmination of centuries of biomechanical optimization. Where Grelnax moves with powerful but wasteful undulations, Lu cuts through water with machine-like efficiency. Her turns, a seamless combination of momentum conservation and explosive power, gain crucial seconds. The Marzolians watch in disbelief as their aquatic specialist loses to a species with no gills, webbing, or natural swimming adaptations. For the chess match, the setting shifts to a transparent dome, where quantum holographic pieces hover between Grandmaster Sofia Petrovich and Sexper, the Marzolian tactical master, assisted by their most advanced AI. Chess originated as a simulation of warfare, Sofia explains to her visibly arrogant opponent. Humans turned killing into thinking, and thinking into art. The game begins conventionally, but by move 12, Sofia employs the chaotic Frankenstein-Dracula variation. The Marzolian eye projects a 73.8% victory probability for its side and recommends standard countermoves. Instead of following this computational logic, Sofia plays moves that sacrifice material with no immediately obvious benefit. The Marzolian eye's probability models fluctuate wildly. Your strategy is illogical, Zexver complains after Sofia sacrifices her queen. That's because I'm not playing against your computer, Sofia replies. I'm playing against your psychology. 4 moves later, she springs a trap invisible to algorithmic prediction, but devastating to an opponent who relies on computational assistance rather than intuition. Checkmate. In the command center, Admiral Vrax smashes a display panel. How does a species with such primitive brains defeat our quantum tactical systems? The Imperial psychologist looks troubled. They don't think like we do. They embrace illogical pathways, emotional decision-making. They weaponize unpredictability. The Imperial communications grid experiences unprecedented strain as trillions of viewers across 17 systems witness humanity's 3rd consecutive victory. On the mining world Centauri Prime, workers abandon their posts to gather around viewing screens. Security forces hesitate to intervene, equally transfixed by the unfolding events. Humanity's cognitive pattern is fundamentally different. The Imperial psychologist continues, displaying neural scans. Their decision-making incorporates emotional variables we've evolved beyond. Our computational superiority becomes a liability against opponents who exploit pattern recognition. Vrax paces the command deck, his exoskeleton clicking against the metallic floor. First endurance, then aquatic adaptation, now cognitive warfare. What are they? Contradiction given form, the psychologist responds. They've developed technology while retaining primitive decision-making processes. They trust feelings over calculations. It makes no evolutionary sense. In the human delegation's quarters, Sophia explains her strategy to Elena, while medical staff attend to Lu Wei's muscle recovery. The Marzolians value certainty above all else, Sophia explains. Their entire empire is built on predictable outcomes, so I gave them chaos, moves that generated multiple potential futures rather than a clear optimal path. Dr. Kim reviews the biochemical data collected during Lu's swim. They expected strength to overcome technique. Their champion produced 340% more propulsive force, but wasted 480% more energy through inefficient movement. Elena nods. They keep measuring individual metrics rather than system efficiency. It's how they've always evaluated species, isolated capabilities rather than adaptive potential. The station's communication system activates, displaying a holographic face unlike previous Marzolian officials, more decorated, more segmented, somehow ancient in its chitinous features. I am Supreme Commander Zextal of the Marzolian High Command, the being announces. This contest has attracted Imperial attention. Your species defies conventional assessment parameters. We call it being human, Elena responds simply. 3 victories through entirely different methodologies, Zextal observes. Endurance predation, biomechanical efficiency, cognitive unpredictability. You are concerning. We're just getting started, Elena replies. The transmission ends abruptly, but surveillance protocols capture Zextal's words to subordinates. Dispatch genetic reconfiguration teams to our remaining champions. Authorize experimentation protocols. Whatever these humans are doing, adapt immediately. Colonel O'Keffer's decryption systems intercept the transmission. They're panicking, she informs the team. They're attempting to reverse engineer our evolutionary advantages in real time. Elena smiles. Perfect. Because gymnastics will show them something they can't possibly replicate without completely redesigning their physiology. Why? Asks Lu Wei, still breathing heavily from her historic victory. Because rigidity, the very exoskeleton that gives them strength, will become their greatest weakness when Raj shows them what a human spine can do. The gymnastics arena features apparatus modified for interspecies competition. Raj Patel, with 16 years of Olympic-level training, faces Marzolian champion Ixnar, whose reinforced exoskeleton gives it tremendous strength. What becomes immediately apparent is that Marzolian physiology, evolved for combat efficiency, lacks human flexibility. Their jointed carapace, perfect for protection, severely limits their range of motion. Raj's routine on the rings demonstrates control so precise that gasps emanate from the alien audience. His body holds positions that appear to defy physics, muscles trembling but never failing as he suspends himself horizontally, then inverts to a perfect handstand. On the parallel bars, Ixnar's attempt ends in humiliation when its exoskeleton prevents a full extension. The Marzolian crashes to the mat, creating a small impact crater but suffering only injured pride. What we're witnessing, broadcasts Dr. Kim to the clandestine human audience back on Earth, is the advantage of our apparent weakness. Our flexible spines, omnidirectional joints, and muscular control, all considered inferior by Marzolian standards, allow us to adapt our bodies in ways their rigid structures cannot match. For weightlifting, however, biology favors the aliens. Kurlak, the Marzolian champion, effortlessly hoists weights that would crush a human skeleton. Maria Gonzalez, Earth's strongest woman, manages respectable lifts, but is ultimately outclassed by raw alien power. As the Marzolians celebrate their first victory, Admiral Vrax summons his science team. "How did we miss this?" he demands, displaying side-by-side comparisons of human versus Marzolian capabilities. Their threat classification was minimal. The Imperial anthropologist's voice trembles. "We misunderstood their recreation activities. Admiral, what we classified as primitive games are actually evolved from survival and warfare techniques. Every human sport originated either from hunting, combat, or essential survival skills." "Elaborate," Vrax commands. "Running, persistence hunting, swimming, crossing dangerous waters, chess, tactical warfare simulation, gymnastics, traversing difficult terrain. Their sports aren't just entertainment. They're weaponized evolutionary adaptations disguised as games." Vrax stares at the human delegation across the arena. They'd been hiding their true nature all along. The genetic modification chambers beneath the arena pulse with ominous light as Marzolian scientists inject experimental compounds into their remaining champions. Supreme Commander Zextal supervises personally, mandibles clicking in agitation. "We underestimated their physiological specialization," the chief geneticist explains. "Their skeletal structure sacrifices protection for articulation. Their neural pathways prioritize fine motor control over defensive reflexes." "Can you replicate these advantages?" Zextal demands. "Replication is impossible without complete physiological redesign," the geneticist admits. "But we've enhanced our remaining champions with artificial muscle strands for improved rotational capability and neural stimulants for faster adaptive responses." "Unacceptable," Zextal hisses. "If we cannot match them, then we must destroy them before these ideas spread further." The Supreme Commander activates a secure communication channel to the Imperial homeworld. "Prepare the Planet Killer Fleet. If we lose these games, Earth must not survive to inspire further rebellion." Unbeknownst to the Marzolians, Alina's team has planted microscopic surveillance devices throughout the station. Colonel Okafor intercepts the transmission and brings the disturbing news to their quarters. "They're planning to destroy Earth regardless of the outcome," she reports grimly. "The Planet Killer Fleet is already mobilizing." Rather than panic, Alina appears thoughtful. "Then we've already won," she says quietly. "How exactly is planetary annihilation a victory?" Dr. Kim demands. "Because they've abandoned their own rules," Alina explains. "The foundation of empire is consistency, predictable consequences for compliance or resistance. By preparing to destroy us even if we comply with the agreement, they've shown every subjugated species that the empire cannot be trusted. That hardly matters if Earth is reduced to atoms," Raj points out, still sweating from his victorious performance. "Then we need to accelerate our timeline," Alina decides. "Colonel, transmit the archery and team handball events to be held simultaneously tomorrow. Cite a scheduling conflict with Earth's rotation, or something suitably scientific sounding." "Why?" asks Sophia. "Because we need to complete all events before that fleet arrives," Alina says, "and we need to ensure every transmission reaches all 17 systems without interruption." "You're thinking beyond saving Earth," Dr. Kim realizes. "You want to bring down the entire empire." Alina nods. "Earth's survival now depends on rebellion throughout the Marzolian domain. We need to give every subjugated species a reason to fight, and the tools to win." The archery competition takes place in an artificial forest environment with variable gravity and wind conditions. Jin-Ho Park, South Korea's archery legend, faces Marzolian marksman Trasvor, equipped with targeting implants that calculate trajectory variables instantly. When the competition begins, Trasvor's first shots hit with mechanical precision. But as environmental conditions shift unpredictably, the Marzolians' technology struggles to recalibrate. Jin-Ho, drawing on decades of intuitive understanding, adjusts his stance and aim almost imperceptibly with each changing condition. Where technology fails to adapt quickly enough, human intuition prevails. Machines calculate. Jin Ho explains afterward. Humans feel. For team handball, 7 humans from different countries face a Marzolian squad whose members tower over them. The aliens possess superior strength, speed, and resilience, yet find themselves consistently outmaneuvered. The human team employs constantly shifting formations and passes that seem to anticipate Marzolian movements. The aliens, accustomed to hierarchical command structures, cannot adapt to the humans' distributed decision-making. Each player acts both independently and collectively. The Imperial sociologist observes with growing alarm. There's no single leader to target, no predictable pattern to counter. In the control room, Admiral Vrax receives urgent communications from the Imperial homeworld. The videos of human victories have leaked across subjugated worlds, inspiring unrest. 3 mineral-rich planets are already reporting labor strikes and resistance movements. These games were a mistake. Vrax hisses. We should terminate this charade and subjugate them immediately. His second-in-command respectfully disagrees. The agreement was broadcast empire-wide. Admiral. Breaking it would show weakness and inspire further rebellion. With the score at 5-1, Vrax faces an impossible choice: honor a losing agreement or abandon the principles that have maintained Imperial control for millennia. Among the viewing pods, representatives from subjugated species exchange furtive communications. Something unprecedented is spreading through the Empire. Hope. The simultaneous victories in archery and team handball send shockwaves through the Marzolian command structure. Encrypted communications between Supreme Commander Zextal and the Imperial War Council reveal growing panic. The rebellions have spread to 7 systems, reports the Security Minister. Subjugated species are adopting human training methodologies and organizational structures. The Centaurians have formed what they call teams that operate without central command nodes, making them impossible to decapitate strategically. And the planet killer fleet, demands Zextal. 16 hours from Earth's orbit, but we're detecting unusual activity throughout the transit corridor. Multiple species appear to be coordinating jamming operations against our command frequencies. In the human delegation's quarters, Alina convenes an emergency meeting. Holographic displays show the approaching Marzolian armada alongside growing rebellion metrics throughout the Empire. We've achieved what seemed impossible, Alina tells her team. 6 victories against the most powerful empire in known space. But now we face their true nature. It would rather destroy us than admit defeat. The final combat event is scheduled for tomorrow. Colonel O'Keffer notes. The planet killer fleet arrives 8 hours later. Then we need to make the combat event matter beyond just winning. Alina replies. Maria needs to do more than defeat their champion. She needs to expose their fundamental weakness for everyone watching. Maria Destroyer Sanchez, whose MMA career made her a legend on Earth, studies holographic projections of Kazdorn, the undefeated Marzolian warrior. Their exoskeletons have reinforced joint sections. Dr. Chen explains, highlighting specific areas. The genetic modifications have improved their rotational capability, but created new vulnerabilities here and here. I see it, Maria nods. Their modifications mimic human joint structures without understanding the muscular control systems needed to protect those joints. A transmission interrupts their planning. Admiral Vrax appears, mandibles twitching with barely contained rage. Your species has violated the competition parameters through technological interference, he accuses. Our security systems have detected unauthorized transmissions throughout the arena. Alina steps forward. We violated nothing, Admiral. But our surveillance systems have detected your communication with the planet killer fleet. You plan to destroy Earth regardless of the competition outcome. Vrax's compound eyes narrow. A civilization that weaponizes games cannot be permitted to spread its influence. You fear us because we've shown every subjugated species in your empire that you can be defeated, Alina counters. Tomorrow's combat will proceed as scheduled. Unless you wish to forfeit now and confirm your weakness to 17 star systems. After the transmission ends, Jin-Ho approaches Elena. The planet killer fleet. Can Earth's defenses stop it? No, Elena admits. Our only hope is that what we've started spreads faster than the Marzolians can contain it. We've given the galaxy the blueprint for resistance. Now we need to give them time to use it. For the final event, mixed martial combat. The Marzolians select their undefeated champion, Kazdorn. Standing nearly 4 meters tall with chidness armor and razor-edged limbs, he has killed 200 opponents in ritual combat across the Empire. Earth sends Maria Destroyer Sanchez, former M&A world champion whose fighting incorporates elements from 26 combat disciplines. At 175 centimeters, she looks like a child next to the alien behemoth. Before entering the arena, Elena pulls Maria aside. Remember the weaknesses we identified: joint articulation points, thermal regulation vents, mandible attachment structures. Got it, Maria nods. Play defense, wear him down, exploit structural vulnerabilities. The combat begins brutally. Kazdorn's first strike sends Maria skidding across the arena floor. The Marzolian audience roars with approval as she struggles to stand, blood trickling from her lip. For 10 grueling minutes, Maria absorbs punishing blows while studying her opponent's movement patterns. The Marzolians grow increasingly confident, already celebrating their victory. Then Maria changes everything. She switches from boxing to capoeira, her movements becoming unpredictable, flowing like water around the increasingly frustrated alien. When Kazdorn lunges, she transitions to judo, using his momentum against him. What is happening? Vrax demands as his champion crashes to the ground for the 3rd time. She's using multiple combat systems, the Imperial Combat Analyst explains, voice tinged with awe. Each time Kazdorn adapts to one, she switches to another he's never encountered. The decisive moment comes when Maria feints with a taekwondo kick, then switches mid-movement to a wrestling takedown, targeting a joint vulnerability in the Marzolian's lower limbs. The sickening crack of exoskeleton echoes through the arena as she applies a submission hold adapted specifically for alien physiology. Kazdorn, the undefeated champion of the Marzolian Empire, signals surrender for the first time in his life. The arena falls deadly silent as the final score appears. Humanity 6, Empire 1. The silence shatters as Kazdorn, humiliated by defeat, violates all competition protocols by drawing a concealed molecular blade. He lunges at Maria's exposed back as she walks away, mandibles splayed in bloodlust. Without turning, Maria executes a perfect spinning back kick that connects with the precise point where his genetically modified joints meet natural exoskeleton. The blade clatters to the floor as Kazdorn collapses, his own modifications becoming his undoing. Predictable, Maria says, loud enough for the arena's audio systems to capture. Just like your entire empire. Across 17 star systems, the Imperial Broadcast Network explodes with unprecedented viewership. On the mining world of Centauri Prime, workers overwhelm their supervisors, using human-inspired cooperative tactics. In the shipyards of Praxis IV, engineers sabotage command systems using techniques gleaned from watching human teamwork demonstrations. Supreme Commander Zextal receives catastrophic reports from across the Empire. How is this happening so quickly? He demands, compound eyes swiveling between emergency holographic projections. The humans didn't just win games, the Imperial sociologist explains, mandibles trembling. They demonstrated methodologies that any species can adopt. Persistence, technique over raw strength, unpredictable thinking, distributed leadership. They'd weaponized concepts, not just demonstrations. In the diplomatic chambers, Elena faces Admiral Vrax for their final confrontation. According to our agreement, Earth remains independent with trade rights, she states firmly. It hardly matters. Vrax hisses. The planet killer fleet arrives in 7 hours. You've won meaningless games while losing everything that matters. Elena smiles. Look at your Empire's communication grid, Admiral. The revolution has already spread beyond your ability to contain it. A junior officer interrupts with urgent news. Admiral, we've lost contact with the Planet Killer fleet. Multiple ship signatures are converging on their position from all 17 systems, including our own defense platforms. Impossible. Vrax staggers back. Who would dare? Everyone. Alina answers simply. Every species you've subjugated now has the one thing they never had before. Proof that the Marzolian Empire can be defeated, and a blueprint for how to do it. From the viewing pods, alien representatives from dozens subjugated species enter the diplomatic chamber, discarding their traditional submissive postures. We invoke Article 7 of Imperial Governance Law, announces the Centaurian ambassador. When leadership endangers the collective through demonstrable incompetence, authority transfers to the Council of Species. Vrax's mandibles clack in disbelief. You dare use our own laws against us? We learned from the humans, replies the Praxian delegate. Use your opponent's strength against them. 1 year after the Fatal Games, Admiral Vrax stands before the Imperial Council, now reduced to ruling just 7 of their original 17 systems. His once gleaming armor is scorched from recent combat. The rebellion spreads like contagion, he reports grimly. Subject species have adopted human training methods and competitive structures. They're forming Olympic committees and sports leagues that function as thinly disguised military training programs. Holographic displays shows Centaurian miners, once considered docile laborers, practicing human running techniques to improve their endurance. Praxian warriors, traditionally rigid and hierarchical, now employ team sports to develop tactical flexibility. These games are dismantling 12,000 years of imperial control. The Grand Emperor rages. How did we not foresee this? Meanwhile, on Earth, the Interstellar Olympic Committee headquarters bustles with activity. Representatives from 26 formerly subjugated species train alongside human coaches. Alina Vasquez, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the newly formed Galactic Council, watches with pride. We never intended to destroy them, she explains to a Praxian delegate whose people recently won independence. We just wanted to show them that there are different kinds of strength. 3 years later, the last Marzolian stronghold falls not to military assault, but to cultural revolution. Their youth, fascinated by human adaptive thinking and collaborative competition, overthrow the rigid hierarchical systems that have limited their civilization's development. 5 years after first contact, a transformed galaxy gathers for the first interstellar Olympics, held in Earth orbit. Former Admiral Vrax, now a refugee granted asylum on Earth, watches human children teaching Marzolian youngsters the fundamentals of soccer. I still don't understand, he confesses to Alina. How did games bring down an empire? That's what you never understood about us, she replies. Humans don't just play games, we transform them. We turned hunting into racing, warfare into chess, survival into sport. When existence itself is a competition, you learn to compete and cooperate in ways evolution alone could never teach. In the stadium above, species from across the galaxy compete not for dominance, but for excellence. The Marzolian Empire, once the galaxy's greatest threat, has experienced a different kind of extinction. Transformed from conquerors into competitors, from subjugators into sportsmen. The games that were meant to be humanity's last stand became instead a revolution that no worship could have accomplished. The peaceful extinction of tyranny through the irresistible power of play. The transformation extends far beyond politics. In medical laboratories on the former Marzolian homeworld, human physiologists work alongside Centaurian geneticists to develop new therapies based on cross-species adaptations. The rigid exoskeletons that once defined Marzolian identity now incorporate flexible biocomposite materials inspired by human spinal columns. In the reformed Imperial Academy, now renamed the Galactic Center for Evolutionary Studies, the former Imperial anthropologist leads a multi-species research team studying how recreational activities reflect and shape evolutionary priorities across different biospheres. The human concept of play has restructured our understanding of intelligence. She lectures to students from 43 worlds. We once believed that advanced civilizations would naturally abandon recreational activities as inefficient. The human model suggests the opposite, that transforming survival imperatives into voluntary challenges creates unprecedented cognitive growth. On the diplomatic front, Earth leads a fundamentally different kind of interstellar community. The Galactic Cooperative Charter, drafted by Elena and representatives from former imperial worlds, establishes competitive frameworks for everything from resource allocation to technological development. "We compete not to dominate but to excel," reads its preamble. "Through structured challenge, we transform conflict into growth." Thomas Kiplagat, whose endurance running started humanity's unexpected path to galactic influence, now coaches beings from across the former empire. His training center on Mars welcomes physiology types that once would have been considered hopelessly incompatible. "The secret was never in our bodies," he tells his diverse students. "It was in our minds, our ability to transform limitations into specialized advantages." In the heart of the former imperial palace, now a museum of cooperative history, a simple display draws the most visitors. It contains only 8 objects: a running shoe, swimming goggles, a chess piece, a gymnast's grip, a weightlifting belt, an archery target, a handball, and fighting gloves. Beneath them, a plaque reads, "The tools that transformed the galaxy, not through conquest, but through play."